I want you to think of liberty as any time you don't have a rope on your horse. And learning to play the 7 games at liberty, you don't start at liberty. And I've already shown you that by having everything on a 22-foot line and being able to do it all with slack in the line. So you're experimenting as though you're at liberty, and then finally you do go to liberty. So what I want to show you is how it can go at liberty. This is the finished product. And it doesn't mean that it would be perfect. We'll see. Sometimes things can go wrong. I don't do it quite right. My horse gets distracted, or he might lose a little confidence. Who knows? And whatever comes up, I'll talk to you about it. So game number 1 is the friendly game. And a lot of people, they get very carried away with being able to, whack their stick on the ground and this stick and string and do all this kind of extreme friendly game. But I want to encourage you not to have that just as a habit, because, well, every time I come in, this is what I do. I check that my horse is okay with this. If you do it as a routine all the time, it actually stops your horse from thinking. So I want you to think about different ways that you could play the friendly game. One day you might come in and just sit here with your horse and do nothing else but just sit with him. You might get down and give him leg massages and wipe the flies off him. That's a friendly game. You might go to his tail and give him tail massages or back leg massages. Anything that helps your horse realize that this is just friendly, relaxed time. Some of us, we get into this little pattern where we always feel like we need to be doing something with the horse. Do. And we never really take the time to really do the friendly game, which is doing nothing. Just having the horse feel good about you being in his space. So that's one way to play the friendly game. Another one that you might do occasionally is the extreme friendly game. Can your horse stay with you and not lose confidence when you do more extreme things? And see, I notice like when he turns his head away, that's a little bit of bother, a little lack of confidence. So I move back to help his head straighten out. That sounded terrible, his head straighten out. He's really straight in the head. But I mean, he couldn't look at me all of a sudden. He turned his head to the side. So that's just to check things every now and then. See, he wanted to come to me. He's just hogging the camera, really. So when he comes to me, I'll take it, but then I'll just push him out of my space a little bit. But I want to not discourage him from coming to me, because that's the most important thing in the world, and it's the best thing that a horse can do. All right, so game number 2 is the porcupine game. And you can do it with your stick or with your hands. So I'll use a stick and push him around. Front end, back end. Porcupine, the back end isn't working today. There we are. So I just waited until he tuned in, because he's kind of fresh out of bed. And I'm going to play them in order for you today, just so that you can keep track of all 7 games. But I would not necessarily do them in order once I've got things going with my horse. I'd keep him thinking and wondering what I was going to be doing next. Of course, I can do the porcupine game on the other side. I can do it on the chest. I might even think of doing something around his leg. That's all porcupine game. I might do something around his neck. Okay, so these are all porcupine games that you could play, and do different kinds of ones every time you play with your horse. Next, driving game. How little does it take? Does your horse stay with you? Does he escape from you? If he escaped, you don't get much chance to fix it at liberty. So what I would do is go back online in a hurry. Don't let the problem get embedded. As soon as you discover a problem, fix it. And remember, liberty is where you advance things and test things. Liberty is where you test what you've got going with your horse, not where you introduce new things. So there I play the driving game, and he made an assumption that he's off in a circle. So I need to bring him back, and it's no big deal. If I catch his attention again and ask him to come back to me, and I'll do that again. But I've got to balance it with the friendly game. So, not a problem, just a misunderstanding. There we go. And I might also do the driving game from zone 3. Have him walk with me where he's leading. And I might do the stick to me game, which is where I'm leading. See, I changed the game plan on him then. He went, oop, I better hurry up and stick with it. So I'd like his head to come up closer to my shoulder. Again, he got a little worried. But instead of getting after him, I just keep my leadership going. And I go, hey, I'm playing stick to me, what about you? And again, that helps build the horse's confidence. Whereas if I went after him and said, hey, you're wrong, then every time I tried to play stick to me, he'd probably get worried about it. Good. Now, try the yo-yo game and see if this time he can go back and come forward without leaving in a circle. Now, he can't look at me, but at least he's not leaving. And when he looks at me, I'll step back to encourage that kind of behavior. Ask him to come to me. This is the hardest one to do in the 7 games at Liberty, is the yo-yo game. So that's something I'd make sure you get going really well when you're online. Now we'll try circling. Now he's kind of pointed that way, so I'm just going to take it. Do you remember the lessons of, wow, well now that you've offered me that, why don't I just go ahead and use it instead of going, no, you will always do it the way that I say. It often puts too much pressure on the horse. If you learn to go with them a little bit, then they start to offer you more and listen to you. So he left to the trot, and now he's walking. So I go, good, I'll take that. Let me do another trot transition. What was great was it worked at phase 1. I could just lift my hand and he went off into the trot. So remember, he broke somewhere behind me, so I'll be interested to see if he does that again. And instead of watching him and waiting for him to make the mistake, I need to trust him and try and just listen to what's going on. And if he slows down and breaks gait, I'll go, how interesting, I wonder why that happened, and then do something to change it. So there, all it took from me that time was a look, because he knows he's supposed to be trotting. So while he's trotting, I might think of a change of direction. See, he knows the pattern very well, because I've rehearsed it a lot online. And I don't mind how fast or how slow he goes, as long as he's trotting, that's all I need. If I start getting too critical, then he's going to go, you know what, I hate this place. It's a work pen, it's not a play pen. Now I'll ask him to canter. And if he breaks gait, instead of just getting after him and trying to speed him up again, I might do something like change of direction. Like there, change of direction. So he knows he's supposed to be cantering, so I just get him alert. See, he just kind of goofed off in his mind, wasn't thinking very much, not being very responsible. He's still kind of waking up. So I just go with it, try to be smarter and not just whack the ground more with my stick and string. I'm trying to do very, very little with my stick and string. So of course I could play little games like how many laps I want him to do. Can I get him to do 4 laps or 6 laps or 8 laps or whatever? And then when I want him to come in, I use my game over stance. When I ask him to disengage like that, I do as little as possible. I'll do more if it's necessary, but he should be able to trust that when I do that, the game's over and he has the confidence to come to me. He's not going to come to me and then I'll surprise him. We're like, oh, by the way, why are you coming to me? Why don't you change directions? Or why don't you do this? He's got to know for sure that's all that it means. So that was pretty nice. So let's try sideways. We can do sideways without a fence. Hindquarters could move a little more. Don't go forward. Move the hindquarters. Nice question that he asked me there. Or I could do sideways with a fence. Now, knowing that those hindquarters were a little bit of a problem there, they were lagging, I need to slow it down so that he can get straighter. So he's not pushing very well with that leg, that hind leg. So instead of asking him to push harder and faster, I'm just going to slow it down. That makes it easier. See, now the hindquarters is going further, and I'll reward him for that. But otherwise, what would have happened, if I put more pressure on the hindquarters at that point, he probably would have turned and left. So naturally, I would do both sides. Check both sides out. I could use my squeeze game to get there. Try to be very, very clear in my body language. And I act as though I've got a rope on him, but I never forget that I haven't. And when I do have a rope on him, I act as if I don't. So what I'm looking for is communication. I'm not looking for anything fancy, anything speedy. I'm going to walk backwards, lead him through. No surprises as he goes through. And when I change my body language and look at his hindquarters, that's what should happen, is that he yields and then either waits there because I want him to wait or comes to me because I was talking to the camera. So there you have 7 games at liberty. And if you mix them up a little bit or even get a little bit more creative about how am I going to play the driving game today so that it's not by rote, it's not the same patterns over and over, then your horse will start to think, you know what, it's kind of interesting being in here. It's a little bit more like a playpen. And also, you don't have to do all 7 games every time. You might come in and just do a few. So help yourself get a little bit of creativity going by using the 7 games, but not all of them and not in the same order whenever you play with your horse at liberty.